joining us right now. Thanks to Uriah Faber and Kelly Brothers. It's Augusta-palooza today. Joining us right now from his palatial Elk Grove estate. Best known for being a neighbor of John. It's Sam Amick. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, gentlemen. I will be cameraless for just a few minutes before I join you, but nice to be with you.
Are we okay, Sam, you and me?
What's the beef?
This guy thinks he can just sit on his show and talk crap and have it not go anywhere. He thinks I'm so busy that I never chime in. Did you tell Jason about this?
You did. So I feel like, Sam, this is your forum now. This is your window. You're on every Thursday at this time. You can fire back.
I'm just saying, be a man and if you got something to say, Dave, say it directly.
Wow.
Oh,
we have beef.
Oh, I prefer to say it behind your back in the hopes you're not listening. And by the way, and shout out to Sam for he's a good national guy, and he's
P1, loves the show.
P1 listening to the show. We appreciate. We'll try to get you a shirt or something. So thank you for that. Samuel, what the hell happened in Dallas? You've got an article out, and we're still dealing with fallout. And I don't. And by the way, let me plug that article that came out Tuesday. Can Luka Doncic follow the Lakers standard set by Kobe Bryant and LeBron James? It's not just the Lakers once again getting gift wrapped another generational superstar, as they did with LeBron James when he signed as a free agent, as Anthony Davis forced his way there through Rich Paul, as Shaquille O'Neal forced his way there from Orlando, Kareem from Milwaukee, on and on and on and on and on. But it's the whole Nico Harrison thing and the ownership in Dallas and the weird. Is there still, in your opinion, a lot more to be uncovered about this thing, or am I just wearing a tinfoil hat?
Yeah, I think you might mean, I don't know if you're maybe even alluding to some of the conspiracy theories about the Vegas ties with.
I don't believe that. Yeah, I don't believe that.
So I think it's just a good old fashioned shocking basketball decision that was, originated from a guy in Nico Harrison who had clearly decided that he was not comfortable being a long-term partner with Luka Doncic and handing, $345 million of the Adelson's money to him. And also, one thing I've learned that I think is relevant to share is, and I know Nico a fair amount. I knew him when he was a Nike rep, and I met him, when he would be at Staples Center waiting for Kobe outside the Lakers locker room, and you had that very, very close relationship. And he's a guy that, I think his vision for the Mavs and his focus was a championship very soon, and he has a bit of a short-term window where, I think that added to the urgency and that added to the impatience as it relates to Luka and some of his habits and the way he carried himself within the organization. None of which is to say that, that I endorse those views, but I think they do explain why he did what he did. It's not even this. I don't get the sense this is he got greenlit, but this is a move that Nico made.
Talking with Sam Amick from The Athletic. Of course, he's brought to you by Jiffy Lube. So, Sam, kind of on that thought, you mentioned the big contract. I think that's a reason, right? There's probably several there for Dallas and Nico in his decision. We may have seen part of that as a factor in De'Aaron Fox here on, potential contracts down the future. So, everybody would say Luka is worth that. Do you think this is something we're going to see more of with teams getting some real hesitation on these massive contracts that are going to be going forward?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I saw a segment yesterday from Draymond Green's podcast where he was talking to Baron Davis about the second apron, and Draymond was making, I think, a mostly on point about the impact of the second apron and how it basically is a hard cap. And he's been a real critic of the CBA, the new CBA for quite some time, and feels like this is the beginning of a trend where players of that magnitude are going to be moved, shockingly, because, the organizations not only don't want to pay that money, but it becomes so restrictive to actually build a roster, around some of these massive contracts. So, yeah, I think that is that is something where you might have seen it play out with the Kings if De'Aaron qualified for the supermax. You know what I mean? I didn't have full clarity on whether or not they were comfortable giving him that. It didn't become an issue because he wasn't on track to get it. But, it wouldn't surprise me if we keep going down this road.
Sam Amick of The Athletic with us. Sam, I'm sorry. I want to bounce back to, if you'll forgive me, to the whole Dallas thing, because where I get really lost, we talked about this a bit yesterday, is like you had that whole thing where Haralabos Vulgaris came in as a whatever the hell he did, guy from, made his name in gambling and other things, obviously had connections, but he comes in. That was kind of weird. Then you have the big report, it's not like we're talking about the Washington Commanders here, but you had a big study, and the culture of the Mavs behind the scenes was allegedly toxic, and there were big things happening. Then you have Mark Cuban, who, as I said yesterday, I don't know that another owner in the NBA enjoys being an owner more than Mark Cuban. And it was so weird to everybody that he up and sold his shares, that there were some people wondering if he was going to run for president. They were searching for reasons. He sells his shares to the Adelson family, the late Sheldon Adelson's widow, as you mentioned. And then you just fast forward to this Luka trade. And by the way, I'm connecting a lot of dots that probably have no business being connected, but I'm just going to toss it back to you again. This doesn't seem like this last 3 years seems incredibly weird to me, and like there's something else going on.
Yeah, I hear you. I don't know where you want me to take that, and I'm not even trying to push back. I just don't know the answers. I won't push back on the idea that it's weird. It's also odd and very surreal to see Mark Cuban still be around, right? Like sitting at the game. He took a lot of flack from Mavs fans the other day because he was, part of the group that was telling people that wanted to fire Nico, reportedly to sit the F down. And so you had Mavs fans that were feeling a little betrayed by Mark, even though he wasn't part of this decision. I think it's pretty clear this trade would never have happened if Mark was still in charge. Luka was his guy. And Mark, personality-wise, was one of those who was going to tolerate, really whatever level of kind of superstar silliness might have come with a talent like Luka, because that's the way he's wired. So, no, I agree. I mean, the idea when Mark sold was that, it would allow him to get in on all of the development around the arena. And there was some logic there where he was kind of supposedly playing the long game. But still, for sure, some unanswered questions. And if you're a Mavs fan, it's stunning, right? Like you thought that, excuse me, you thought that the Luka statue, it was only a matter of time before that was up next to the Dirk statue. And that's what your fandom was going to be about. And now here we are.
Sam, on the Lakers side of things, I totally makes sense why they would do it. They've got, as Dave mentioned, just the next generational Laker for years to come. Do they think because I didn't believe they were a championship team this year, even with LeBron and AD, but do they think now this year, this fast, they've got the goods, or is it going to take Luka and some work in the offseason to kind of get in that window?
So they were hoping to be in that window this year, but the Mark Williams thing is an issue, obviously, one of the stranger stories that we've seen in a while. And they needed a rim running, alley-oop catching big, and seemed like they had, likely had that in this 23-year-old with a bunch of upside. But now you're talking about Jackson Hayes, Alex Len, familiar face to Kings fans. And I don't know. I mean, their vision, I think, is more the offseason, but they also know that they've got to convince Luka to stick around. And I think he likely will, but, not if the team's not winning at a high level. And so they go out and they destroy Utah, the game that I was at the other night. Luka looked fine, but it was honestly more LeBron played really well, and it's the Jazz. But then they dropped the game last night. When what struck me about that was that the first game with Luka. He didn't really have a Luka game. He hadn't played it over a month. He was kind of rusty, and I wrote that it was virtually meaningless. Last night, his stat line is much more Luka-esque, but they find a way to lose to a Jazz team that they shouldn't be losing to. So we'll see how they look. It's late in the season. They're right in the middle of that pack. They were playing incredibly well before the trade, and obviously, they're pushing for home court in the first round. So we got to kind of wait and see what this group looks like.
Is this Mark Williams trade thing gonna get even more weird? And also, how does this affect LeBron's legacy?
I don't, the Mark Williams trade thing in our shop, and I'm leaning on the inside of the John Hollingers of the world and people who have actually been in front offices. There's quite a bit of surprise and confusion about the way the story is being reported right now, because, and we could be wrong, but there's just not really any mechanism for there to be what was kind of put out there by ESPN as like a mock trial between the two sides to see, who's going to win this debate. By and large, front office people that I've talked to, in addition to our people, just feel like there's nothing you can do. You can do sour grapes for a while and try to win the media war and try to get your narrative out there, but there's nothing you can do. Admittedly, I learned a fair amount in this process about how the medical side of trades getting cleared, they're not all that specific about if you raise a red flag. You don't necessarily have to make a compelling argument and really prove what you are raising the red flag about. There is. It appears like an informal avenue to have second thoughts about a trade and just back out. Now, it doesn't happen typically because you're going to have long-term ramifications relationship-wise. But there are certainly some people who feel like that might be what happened here.
Yeah, the ramifications and the relationship part is really interesting to me, Sam, because, you draft a guy like Dalton Knecht. They played him. They seem to be high enough on him, and then they trade him along with Reddish, and now you have to take those guys back. I know it's a business and all that, but that to me seems like the hardest part of all this for both sides, taking the player back.
Yeah, I agree. I would probably be more focused on that, Jay, if you were talking about high-profile guys.
That's true.
The Mark one, Mark can't be in his feelings because you had a team that gave up a lot to go get him. So you should be flattered by that. And then maybe disappointed that you're back with Charlotte because you're not as competitive. But to me, there should be no emotional hangover there. And then the Dalton Knecht one, and I don't mean to kind of like take it too lightly. It's a young guy that liked wearing that Lakers jersey. But when he decided, when he didn't play for personal reasons and JJ Redick said he needed more time to process it, I don't know. There was part of me that was like, somebody needed to get in his ear and say, young fella, like you're making a lot of money. You got to be a pro and just go play ball, but it is what it is. I was more referring to the front office relationships and the fact that, if you're Charlotte and you get to the next trade deadline and the Lakers call about something, you might not even pick up the phone. It's that kind of thing.
Sam Amick joining us. Before we get to the next question for our YouTube viewers, don't think we're not going to notice Doggy in a sweater. What's going on here on your lap here?
You think I'm in control of this dog? Come on, man.
No, I get it.
In the chat here for having a little fancy dog.
No, everyone wants to. We want to see the dog. We're hoping you could hold up the dog so we can at least.
Fittingly, the sweater says "spoiled." I think that's right. This is Willow, the mini Labradoodle, much minier than we thought she was going to be. A grand total of 13 pounds. So she's our little pup.
Hyperallergenic dog, I believe. Is that correct?
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yep.
Sam, when is I imagine you have a 2 to 3 page multi-author think piece coming out about De'Aaron Fox unfollowing Domantas Sabonis. Well, let me, it's so stupid and I couldn't care less as I'm about to ask you a question about it though. Am I being, look, let me be careful here. There are, at least in my world, unconfirmed rumors that when it comes to the behind-the-scenes coach drama with the Kings, that it was never De'Aaron Fox that didn't see eye to eye with Mike Brown, that there was the occasional not seeing eye to eye with Domantas Sabonis and Mike Brown, and then Brown's fired and Fox takes the blame and blah, 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 blah. When you see something like somebody unfollowing somebody on social media, do you read anything more into it? Or as De'Aaron Fox said yesterday, I just don't care to see the feed, basically?
I mean, he made it more substantive because he didn't just say, I don't care to see the feed. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, but like, I worked basically like we were coworkers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's again, not picking a side here. That is revelatory and I think interesting. And I know you joke about how you don't care, but like you said, A, you brought it up, and B, I actually think it does teach us more about the dynamics at the end. And I think you are responsible and fair to point out what you did about the Mike Brown component. I think one thing that we continue to learn and have crystallized even more than before is that De'Aaron was still rocking with Mike Brown. And so, even though the optics looked like the exact opposite when Mike was laying into him the night before, he was fired after the game and then talking to him at practice. And it appeared that maybe De'Aaron grew fed up with Mike's voice. That was not the case. And you're correct that, if you would ask me to have a power rankings of like players who kind of butted heads with Mike, and certainly prominent players, Domas would probably be number one. And that wasn't really a secret. So, maybe I don't want to speculate too much, but it doesn't seem crazy to think that De'Aaron, thinks that Domas, played some part in the decision that was ultimately made. But he's the one he's being so transparent publicly right now.
Yeah.
And I wonder how his people feel about it, because it's not really manicured media, but it's pretty genuine, it appears. And I know he's getting killed by the fans. I tend to be a sucker for truth, so I like the fact that he's at least being real, and kind of letting people know where his head was at a little bit.
Jason, just to crystallize, I have it in front of me here. Somebody asked him why'd you unfollow Sabonis, and De'Aaron's verified account said, "Don't care to see it. Why is that your problem?" He then went on. The guy said, "Dang, like that? All right." And he goes, "Like what? I don't care to see it." And then the guy said, "Well, that's your boy, though." And De'Aaron said, "We were teammates. It's okay not to be close to everybody."
Which is true.
Which is
but he's choosing to say that publicly.
Right. It's like none of those thoughts.
I mean, you guys know this better than anybody. Yeah. Who are you?
That's a great point, Sam.
I was kind of waiting for that one. No, none of this is bad. I mean, it's just weird that it's being shared publicly.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys think this parallels Tyrese Halliburton in a way, Dave and Sam, because I thought when he was traded, obviously it was, there was a lot of people upset about that trade. You were waiting to get Sabonis here. People loved Halliburton. And then he talked about it a little bit. It's like, oh, man, he really wanted to be here. Then he talked about it some more. And then he talked about it some more. And I felt like over time, he kept talking about it where maybe the fans were ready to move on, or the organizations. I feel like both organizations, the Spurs and the Kings, have moved on, Sam. But like you said, I don't think the fans are done with this. And neither does De'Aaron seem to be. And so now that game here next month, I honestly don't even know what the reaction is going to be for De'Aaron Fox.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I tend to think so much of this is on social media. At least right now, I will handicap that, the real life version is respectful with, I'm sure, a smattering of booze. Maybe I'll be wrong.
I think it's 30-70, 20-80. I agree with you, Sam.
But you always hear booze.
You will hear the booze, but I agree with you, Sam. I think it's going to be 8 out of 10 cheers.
Well, and that's just my own quick commentary on human nature and, social media versus reality. And it's really easy to clap back and yell at a dude on social media when you see him in there and you remember that he did, play really hard and really well for 8 years for the organization. was a great guy in the community. All those things, those should not be forgotten. But it certainly makes it interesting. And to your point, Jay, about Tyrese, what strikes me a little bit about that is that the Kings fan base is funny because on the one hand, the national reality and perception is that players look at Sac like a small market and it's not a desirable place to be. But when guys come here, this fan base is very passionate, and it almost just feels like even though they might want to play elsewhere, they really don't like being sideways with this fan base. They don't like, not being loved by this fan base. And, sometimes might even try extra hard to clean some of that up because they think they're unfairly disparaged by this fan base. So, I do think that's a bit of a thread there.
I think as we wrap up here, I think, Sam, probably a big reason why I tend to be fine with De'Aaron is, my opinion, I think part of the shock for a lot of people is that he's about the, people call him a snake or this. He's actually, in my opinion, one of the realest guys out there. And the problem is you're not getting the filter on this. First off, he was very active in the community. He named a damn pair of his shoes after a guy's taco truck, which is phenomenal. All the charity stuff, blah, blah, blah. But in a different way than DeMarcus, who was also incredibly real, sometimes too real sometimes. Like, Fox doesn't really have a filter. He just says he does not care. He will say what he thinks. And I think what a lot of people are getting a glimpse of that maybe they just don't like is the way De'Aaron Fox is being and saying and talking is how the NBA guys are. They just don't say it and talk it, and they have this smooth, manicured image. And Fox is like, yeah, dude, it's business. Like, we weren't in bunk beds. And sorry, and I do care about how you guys feel, but I'm not going to play some PR game. I'm just going to say the crap that's on my mind unfiltered. And sorry if you don't like it, but it's the truth. And to be honest, for me, I'd rather have the unfiltered truth, the real individual, than have somebody that's, got 17 PR guys manicuring every statement and every word that comes out of their mouth. That's me.
I didn't hear anything you said after Buck Bed. I just have this visual of Domas and Fox. Good night, Foxy. Good night, Domas.
There's so much room for activities now.
You turn off the light. I'll turn off the light.
All right. Well, anyways, Sam, appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. I will try to live up to Katie's standard going forward, Dave.
But with the yeah. See, and by the way, if you heard her interview at all yesterday, she availed us to the not the loofah, not the washcloth, but the scrub gloves for the shower. I ordered a pack of 30. So maybe I'll send you. We're going to do a review on the air. We're not going to use them on the air, but we'll do a review on the air. And maybe if you want, I'll send you a pair down, KHTK branded pair.
Oh, okay.
And you can give us your own review.
That sounds amazing. I'm a little surprised you even had the audacity to go back to that topic where you were slipping up with, things.
Yeah. There we are. And and he waited all the way till the end of the interview to talk his garbage.
Yeah,
like a true professional.
Yep.
All right. Sam's dog, appreciate you. Sam, you're cool too. And we will talk to you next week.
See you guys.
All right, see you, brother. We'll take a break when we return.